Let's talk about some specific examples how to resolve that. As an example, I love to use the strategy and the tool of chair work. So basically the idea is that you have different parts within you. Maybe this wound that you're having is still this little child that feels lonely and actually depressed. But then you have another side within you, which is this coping strategy. Well, I gotta be strong, I gotta be a perfectionist, for example, all the time. And even clients share with you this inner conflict that they're having, that maybe they're lazy and tired, but then they're very hard on themselves and they're pushing themselves all the time and they're not very nice to themselves. And then we actually set up 2 chairs and people start actually having a conversation with themselves. Maybe they sit on the perfectionist side and then they say, well, I feel good here, I feel great. This is the problem over there. Okay, interesting. Can you tell that this side? We do like a little role play and they say, oh no, this is weird. Can you nevertheless do it? Then you turn around and say, you're the problem, I don't like you, please leave my life. Then they switch the chair to this depressed, tired side, the lonely side. And then they say, well, maybe they don't get angry at all. Maybe over time they get angry and say, well, what are you doing? Like, we're the same team and my feelings are real. Why are you always putting me down, right? And then an interesting discussion comes up and basically the idea is to integrate all sides. Another idea and tool I love to use is inner child work. Because over time, when we notice those patterns, I love to also talk about specific examples. Because if you talk about specific examples in their life, also emotions get evoked. You don't just want to talk big picture. And maybe there is this representative example of I was 9, I was crying in my room, my mom opened the door and she just shouted at me again and left, and I was sitting there alone. And this was basically really very painful. And we noticed maybe that's just a representative example of what happened, this wound. And then we actually do a visualization. We visualize, you actually go back in time, go to that house or apartment, open the main door, go up the stairs, open your room, and you see that little child there. You walk up to that, give that child a hug, you tell that child what that child needs to hear and what nobody told that child back then, but somebody should have. And you say that out loud. And then you give that child what it needs. Maybe you go out and play a little bit. Maybe you actually go downstairs and talk to the mother in your visualization saying, hey, you're neglecting this child, whatever. But the idea is you're meeting your wounded place with compassion. Healing comes when you meet your wounded place with compassion. You meet that place, you go there, you see that painful child there that suffers, and you meet it with compassion. You hug it and you tell her what he or she needs to hear. That's often also, how this healing simply comes, and then you just, in a relaxed way, you don't have this need anymore to use that coping strategy, maybe this perfectionist side, or maybe being depressed or anxious, or even like suffering from bulimia or whatever it is, right? That falls away naturally. You don't need to push this away. I have to learn how to be nicer. No, we gotta actually just understand where this is coming from and heal from that. Though I want to share, sometimes confrontation is also a very good thing. Again, with perfectionism, if people, maybe they go through a depressive episode, but they still have like super high standards. They say, I need to perform at this level. Well, then I tell them, well, if you want to run a marathon and you broke your leg, you're not going to say, well, I need to keep running and finish this marathon. You notice I need a break for a couple of months and retreat. Now, you're going through this phase right now, but you still have your standards up here. That's the same. You are stubborn, I feel like. And that also often resonates with clients. Now, you don't just always do that. You just see a little bit what the client needs. And it's also very important that you don't share this out of anger as a therapist. You share this out of love, but we'll talk about this later in this video. But confrontation sometimes can be also very helpful, and it makes people understand, like, oh, true, like he's right. Nobody shared it that way. And then we can start working maybe on the inner child work and the chair work. And confrontation can be also very powerful. Sometimes I even like to invite people. Maybe we talked about the mother or the father. Maybe we cried over this again and started understanding patterns already. And then suddenly the rubber meets the road and we say, great, let's invite your mom. Let's talk about this together. Often great change happens just within a session by calling things out we never did, being very understanding why the mother acted back in the days, because she had also a very good reason and she also had a childhood that shaped herself, and just nurturing understanding and connectedness can be very powerful. I often do this even with entrepreneurs. They invite their mom and their dad, and this improves their business at the end of the day. Yeah, and there are many more tools. I don't want to bore you with that. Over time, I get less and less tool-oriented. And I notice really it's just more about the space we create and the things we share. Sometimes having this tool and saying, now we do this visualization or now we do this exercise. Sometimes I feel like coaches and therapists are doing this because they need clarity and they, okay, this is the clarity of the session, we do that. But sometimes you need to be okay with feeling helpless and not knowing the patterns and just allowing the session to evolve. And then at the right time, you can have a couple of tools, a couple of exercises, and yeah, that might be the most fruitful thing. And there are many more exercises, but just sharing them and sharing the big picture is not as helpful as actually going to coaching and therapy in this context here, and experiencing it yourself by having a clear topic, and then at the right time, there's the right tool that evokes emotions, that evokes insight. And it's not as powerful to just summarize it. So that's just a little big picture right here. And let's move on to the next chapter.